Okay, I think it's about 6 p.m. now. So good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. The date's February 12th, 2026. Welcome to tonight's continued public hearing. My name is Jim Mazzacco. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. And of course, we have one case scheduled for this public hearing. And this is a continued case, and the number is TP-ENT-0125-00021-TEP Substation Vine Avenue, Ward 6. First, I want to thank everyone who so far has given spoken and written testimony. I have listened closely to the spoken testimony and reviewed the materials that I have received since January 29th hearing. I don't think I need to rehear a lot of that testimony, but I would like to hear Mr. Eddy if he would like to summarize his position and materials he's submitted for the public hearing. And after that, I would probably like to hear Mr. Dempsey and Mr. Schwartz to summarize their position for the record. And if anyone else wants to speak, they're welcome to come forward and speak. Again, I've heard a lot of testimony. I know a lot of the issues from studying the written materials and from last week's or 2 weeks ago's public hearing. So with that, let me just check my notes here a second. I'll ask you, Mr. Eddy, to come up and kind of give your summation or whatever, however you want to describe it.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mazzacco. And for the record, Stephen Eddy, Director of Public Affairs for Tucson Electric Power, 88 East Broadway. So again, thank you, Mr. Mazzacco, for taking the opportunity to maybe take a breather, a 2-week hiatus to review the material that was presented 2 weeks ago, and of course, the material that we presented a few days ago. And so I'll outline our responses to the 3 questions that you had proposed 2 weeks ago. But again, as we outlined within our written submission, the request before you and for this case concerns only the Vine substation. This facility is a critical component of improving electrical reliability within central Tucson, and it has been designed and conditioned to meet every applicable city standard. We also want to formally thank staff. I know they have put in a diligent amount of work, not just in this case, but in prior cases. This has been a long process, and we hope that this substation is the last conclusion of this public process. So the 3 areas, and I won't list the questions that you provided, but the first item was respect to the impacts on historical neighborhoods. So as part of the line siting process, in addition to this process, TEP retained professionals to assess the potential impacts to historical districts and contributing properties along the Midtown Reliability Project. Their analysis concluded that no historic contributing property, no historic district, and no listed structure will be removed, delisted, or have its integrity diminished as a result of the transmission line. Importantly, the Vine substation itself is located outside the historic district of Jefferson Park Historic District, and that is by design. In fact, it is within the U of A planning area, and I believe you all had received a letter from the University of Arizona confirming that is in fact within the planning boundary and conforms to their uses within the university. With respect to the university area plan, opponents have pointed out that the UAP as a basis for requiring underground facilities. This matter was fully litigated during the ACC hearing, and the conclusion reached and affirmed by both the Line Siting Committee and the ACC is that the UAP does not mandate undergrounding of high voltage transmission lines, and does not impose such requirements on the Vine substation. Nonetheless, the project aligns with the UAP's intent through capable design, landscape, and placement outside historic neighborhoods. The third was around feasibility and cost of undergrounding. So I think as part of this process, I think it's important to note as part of our approvals with notably mayor and council, there was 3 exceptions that we applied for as part of the process established by mayor and council. 2 of those were granted, 1 was not. And that is at the Broadway and Euclid intersection. So just for a little bit of context with respect to the cost differential between that intersection of undergrounding versus overhead, the cost estimate that we've received for our engineering to put that intersection, which is roughly 800 feet underground, is approximately $6.5 million. Comparatively, it would be $250,000 to construct it overhead. With that said, though, and I think Mr. Mazzacco, you had pointed out some of the outside the box thinking that we might consider as part of this project, and I think relating to the transmission line itself. We noted this in the previous hearing, is that as part of this project, we are undergrounding a considerable amount of distribution lines, low-lying distribution lines, as well as retiring an entire 46 kV system as a result of the construction of the 138 transmission line, as well as the Vine substation. So roughly 6.3 circuit miles of distribution lines will be undergrounded, and 19 miles of aging 46 overhead infrastructure will be retired, in addition to 8, I believe I've got that number right, 8 substations for 1. That's an 8-to-1 reduction in substation and infrastructure equipment. What's that?
Could you go over that one more time? You said
Okay.
6.5 miles of undergrounding of distribution lines?
So yes. And again, this is a condition of our permit with the ACC and for this transmission line. TEP committed to undergrounding approximately 6.3 circuit miles of distribution lines that are along the route for the Midtown Reliability Project. Additionally, TEP will retire 8 existing 46 kV substations and remove approximately 19 miles of 46 kV infrastructure. And again, I provided this testimony 2 weeks ago, but the reason why we are building this substation and this line is to upgrade our facilities from an aging, antiquated system, the 46 kV system, to a more robust 138 kV system. In closing, the Vine substation meets all applicable city standards, is consistent with Plan Tucson and the University Area Plan, and satisfies the UDC, the Unified Development Code. We appreciate staff's recommended approval and the preliminary conditions that have been outlined. And I did receive a note earlier with respect to the design review board approval for the substation wall, and want to clarify that the design for that substation wall applies to both the east and west sides of the proposed Vine substation.
The wall, again, so when they talk about step in, it's
Yeah.
a vertical step in that, you know, puts some, it's not just one monotonous mass.
Yes.
There's some definition in the
That's
wall.
correct.
And also there, if I could,
Yeah.
there's talk about using core 10 weathered steel plates Is that correct? And that would be worked into the design, I assume. Would the final product go back to the design review board, or is that completely up to you, how that is designed? Just a question.
So we did go in front of the design review board and presented the material that was approved 4-0. And in there is the design standards for both the wall and landscape treatment, if I'm correct. And we are all agreeable to the conditions that were placed on that design review board approval. I think, again, just going back to the clarification I was trying to make, it applies to both the east and west sides of the wall. I don't think that was clear in the approval, and Mr. Beal, I'm hoping we're addressing that correctly.
I think the condition just said east side, and that caught my eye, and I thought, why would you do that on the east? That's the wrong side. So it's east and west.
East and west.
Okay.
Yep. That concludes my comments, unless you have any questions.
I don't have any questions now, but I'll call you back after everybody speaks, and then I may have a few questions.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzocco.
Thank you. Mr. Dempsey, do you want to speak now?
Good evening. This might be a.
Do you mind if you put your name and address for it?
Yeah. So my name is Daniel Dempsey with Underground Arizona. We have submitted 3 written comments and 5 exhibits for the record, and this is our second verbal comment. Once again, I want to state out front that we support this project so long as it is conditioned on undergrounding in the university area plan. City plans and ordinance exist for a reason. As Banner said before the ACC, property owners invest in an area under the expectation that they will be enforced. The University of Arizona does not belong to the neighborhoods that border it. It belongs to the whole city, the whole region, and indeed the whole state. Making it look terrible because TEP screwed up in its planning and due diligence makes absolutely 0 sense. These poles will stand for 100 years. There is no reason to encircle the university in 90-foot poles when there is 0 such infrastructure in the area, and our plans and ordinances are unequivocal that new infrastructure should or must be underground. We have to build the infrastructure of tomorrow today. We cannot build new overhead lines in the densest part of town only to tear them down and underground them in 20 years. That is substantially more wasteful than doing it the right way from the beginning. APS did it in Central Phoenix 60 years ago, and it did it adjacent to ASU 20 years ago. There's nothing but TEP's own hubris stopping it from doing the same thing in Central Tucson today. TEP was supposed to provide you information on cost. Instead, it said it need not provide such information and merely provided conclusory findings from a different process subject to different legal standards. Moreover, those conclusory findings aren't even very helpful to its case. Just because undergrounding costs more upfront does not mean the plans and ordinances are unenforceable. Could you imagine if a subdivision developer said, undergrounding utilities makes my houses cost more, therefore I can ignore your laws? That doesn't make any sense, right? Cost does not determine the enforceability of city code, neither does who pays for it. We suspect that TEP avoids discussing cost because it knows that cost cannot create a feasibility issue under its franchise agreement. Therefore, it has to pretend this process is preempted when it is not. And as we demonstrated in our responsive comments, even if cost could create a feasibility issue, the cost here is insignificant by any reasonable definition. TEP's response on cost focuses on its erroneous opinion that the ACC process preempts city process. This is just not supported by the record or the law. The ACC and city processes are separate with different legal standards. The outcome of one does not determine the outcome of the other. The ACC determines routes. City law determines how a line is built within those routes. It is not possible for city law to be a collateral attack on the ACC. There are multiple court decisions on this issue that are not difficult for TEP to read. This project would be done by now if TEP simply followed city plans and ordinances from the start. All of the delays and headaches we have had to deal with are a result of TEP's misplaced intransigence. There is nothing legally or practically stopping TEP from undergrounding these lines. As City Attorney Roy Lusk stated at the ACC hearing, TEP's preference does not trump city law. Other Arizona utilities do it even when it's not prescribed by plans or ordinances. TEP does not seem to understand the purpose of public process, or it does not seem to understand that the purpose of public process is to surface potential issues early and more quickly so they can be avoided. This process did that. TEP simply ignored what was surfaced because it didn't like it. That's just poor leadership at TEP. This project would be done by now if we had better leadership at TEP. In closing, I am shocked that TEP opened its response by telling you that what you decide does not matter. I was further shocked that TEP refused to substantively respond to your request for information on cost. This process is not preempted by ACC process. TEP cannot legally build new transmission lines in the area without the Vine substation. As such, perhaps instead of denying the application, you should approve it, conditioned on TEP undergrounding in the university area plan. That covers the West University HPZ and other undergrounding or in other historic areas. It also maximizes compliance with Plan Tucson 2025, which says undergrounding shall be a priority. TEP has presented no reason why this cannot be done. The ACC has no jurisdiction over how lines are built. If the ACC wants to sue TEP for following the city laws, let it. And if TEP wants to sue the city, let it. Neither have any chance of succeeding in court and will merely be delaying the inevitable conclusion that laws matter. TEP is not above the law and should not be allowed to treat Tucson as a second-class city or the University of Arizona as a second-class university. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we can, okay. Mr. Schwartz?
Thank you.
Name, address for the record.
My name is John Schwartz, 3720 North Camino Villa Maria, Tucson. And I'm a member of the steering committee of the Tucson Neighborhood Undergrounding Coalition. Here's the truth. TEP is so opposed to following city rules to underground unless it's paid for by the city that to avoid it, they will do anything. They will make any statement, no matter how misleading, no matter how contradictory with their other statements. They will propose anything, no matter how harmful to their own customers. I'm going to give you 6 quick examples. I could mention dozens more, literally, but there's only time for these, and even these 6 might go just a few seconds over my 5 minutes. First, TEP testified as recently as the last hearing that if they are required to underground to get the zoning exception, they will do the project overhead without connecting to the substation. That is, TEP will deprive all their good customers who would otherwise get upgraded power from the Vine substation any benefit at all from the project. That's a substantial number of customers who would get no benefit. TEP is willing to leave all those customers with a risky delivery system that TEP said here tonight itself, said it's antiquated, and they've said elsewhere that it's outdated, decrepit, and very unreliable. Now, we believe that if they're asked to underground here and decide to do what they've said they're going to do, that we can still stop it in a number of ways. Second, moreover, when TEP says that if they don't get the rezoning, they'll just go overhead without connecting to the substation, they are acknowledging that connecting the lines is a crucial reason for them needing to upgrade the substation, thus a crucial reason for their request for an exception. That's contrary to what TEP is now saying, that the zoning examiner cannot consider the lines in determining an exception. Yet TEP, as I just mentioned, is saying that basically that's the reason they need the exception, is because of connecting the lines. Third, TEP claims that the cost of undergrounding makes undergrounding infeasible. When the franchise contract they themselves signed with the city of Tucson specifically states that in determining infeasibility, cost cannot be a consideration. Fourth, also in support of its positions, TEP repeatedly refers to decisions of the ACC, which in addition to being dead wrong factually, have been legally overturned elsewhere, and so are now actually null and void. This includes ACC and TEP's arguments that ratepayers cannot be charged for undergrounding and that the cost of undergrounding is unfeasible. The cost of undergrounding this project, by the way, in the 2 miles it's supposed to be undergrounded, amortized over the life of the project and spread over all ratepayers, would be less than one $2 candy bar per ratepayer per year. Fifth, TEP says they don't believe it's at all fair to pass the cost of undergrounding onto anyone but nearby residents. Yet somehow TEP's sense of justice never extends to consider the fairness to nearby residents and businesses of the potential loss in their property value, or the permanent damage to the character of their surroundings, or the possible effects on future development where giant lines are going. None of this side is ever part of TEP's fairness equation. And sixth, at the same time, the TEP insists it's unfair to burden anyone but nearby neighbors with the cost. TEP willingly proposed and then promoted a citywide proposition that would tax all city residents to pay the cost of undergrounding the project. There are dozens more examples, as I said. It's sad to say, but when it comes to undergrounding, you cannot trust a single claim or argument that TEP makes. Time and again, their statements are misleading, contradictory, deceptive, outright false, or even against the interests of their own customers. Let me conclude then by stating what this means. The UDC of the city clearly specifies that in connection with a request for a zoning exception, the zoning examiner cannot grant any zoning exception that conflicts with a duly enacted area plan, such as the university area plan. The university area plan plainly specifies, quote, wherever possible, place utility and service equipment underground or in a visually screened location, unquote. Undergrounding the project is clearly feasible, and there is no way at all to visually screen industrial-sized 100-foot poles and transmission lines that tower over everything else. Approval of the zoning exception must be conditioned on TEP placing all lines that are within the university area underground. No matter how many ways TEP tries to deceive, there is no sound case for TEP not to follow city rules. That, we believe, is the bottom line. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, if there's anybody, do we have people? Okay. Let's see. There's four. Okay. So we have Kathy McLaughlin. And when you come up, give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Mazzarco. I'm Kathy McLaughlin, 2739 East Carthay Circle. I'm a native Tucsonan and an architect. I care about the built environment, and I've been an advocate for ridding the city of billboard blight since 1985. I've actually had a connection with Tucson Electric Power my entire life. I grew up next door to Jake Snyder, who was at the time Tucson Gas, Electric, Light, and Power Company president, as I recall. I'm here representing the thousands of people who have been involved in this issue for 6.5 years. I was at the meeting at Pima College in October of 2019 when I told Mr. Ed Beck that I didn't think he could put his power lines up Keno and Campbell, and he assured me, oh no, he could do that. And then John Schwartz found out that he really could not. So I'm asking you, I have worked as my entire professional career under rules, regulations, and codes. And I'm asking you to please enforce the city rules, regulations, and codes.
Betsy Larson.
Hello, Mr. Mazzocco. My name is Betsy Larson, 820 North 6th Avenue. I am president of the West University Neighborhood Association. Kathy, when you were talking just now and you were saying 6 years ago we were all doing this, I was pregnant with that little boy over there in my belly at the beginning of this process. He has never known a moment where I have not been fighting this. I think that's just adds context. So on behalf of the West University Neighborhood Association, I greatly appreciate your careful consideration of the facts and history of TEP's proposed Midtown Reliability Project. Thank you for listening to our community and honoring this robust public process. As part of my comments on January 29th, I raised concerns about our neighborhood's protections and required public process as defined under our historic preservation zone. You called out my concerns directly that evening and asked TEP if they could provide further details of pole locations, and TEP's response was nonsensical. They managed to dodge our specific questions and hid behind the findings of the Arizona Corporation Commission. Let's be clear. Our neighborhood's HPZ is not under ACC jurisdiction. TEP doubled down on hiding behind the ACC in their latest response to you, Mr. Mazzocco, dated February 10th of this year. Under the title Request 1, TEP failed again to acknowledge our HPZ. If TEP took the time to understand our city code, they would know that zoning violations often predict the loss of a historic property. The consequences of zoning violations can take years or even decades to destroy a historic property's contributing status. Preservation is a complex tapestry that requires thoughtful analysis and specific zone planning. TEP continues to oversimplify historic preservation and misrepresents the ACC's control over such matters. Why does TEP continue to ignore the existence of our HPZ? Unlike a historic district, our HPZ contains stringent restraints. Given the lack of information TEP has provided, it is impossible to know how TEP's MTR project will impact our HPZ without details of pole dimensions, placement, and line sway over properties. Further, TEP should be required to submit their project before the West University Historic Zoning Advisory Board. Euclid is a narrow and congested roadway. Sidewalk accessibility, large utility placements, and historic properties will all be competing for space. We should expect a public process to ensure TEP is compliant with our neighborhood zoning overlay. I focus on our HPZ not because I believe it's more important than the other undergrounding arguments, but because it demonstrates TEP's lack of genuine engagement. For the last 6 years, TEP has continually failed to show up and listen to our community with intention and honesty. They might check off public outreach boxes or make colorful graphics to convince officials, but the proof is not in the pudding. Had they been listening these past 6 years, they would have addressed our HPZ and the broader U of A plan with respect. Mr. Mazzocco, I urge you to not reward TEP's disrespect of our community. For far too long, they have been granted an unchecked rubber stamp. Now is the time to uphold our laws. There's one other thing I want to mention really quick. In their response, under the historic section, there is a image. It's a map. I believe it's called in figure 1 is what it's labeled. And it's a map of our area. And it's supposed to be a map of historic protection. They only have colored in the National Historic District. They have completely omitted our HPZ, which seems kind of bonkers to me. If you're going to make a historic map to support your argument, you should absolutely include the HPZ. They also left out the U of A plan boundaries. They conveniently left in the tighter U of A planning campus plan, which is clearly defined, but the U of A plan boundary is completely absent. So I think that figure 1 in their response should be taken with a grain of salt. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you having us here today.
Thank you. So that's all the speaker forms I have. Is there anyone else that would like to say something? Okay, Mr. Eddy?
In closing, Mr. Mazzocco, I think I've stated this earlier, and we recognize this as a company and as the team that has been responsible in siting the transmission line. That case has been litigated and resolved. We have an approved route for the Midtown Reliability Project. The case that you are considering is related to the Vine substation, a special exception land use permit for a substation. I have been involved in these substation sightings for quite some time. I think we've had a little over 5 sell-ups for substation uses in the last 5 or 6 years. And as part of those processes, right, that go in front of the zoning examiner, it's looking at its conformance with the UDC and ensuring those standards are met. And I believe that staff has outlined how this substation is in conformance with the UDC as well as other applicable plans. And again, we have stated such in our earlier application, as well as the restated response that we provided. This substation will provide significant benefits to the entire Midtown area. You know, I think we often take reliability for granted and ensuring that those lights turn on when we flip the switch. Infrastructure improvements like the Vine substation ensure that we can meet the demand that our customers put on our grid, but also more importantly, the reliability that they expect. Vine substation will do just that. And that is the case that we are in front of you for, and we respectfully request your consideration and approval for the Vine substation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a couple of things about the recommended conditions from staff.
Yes.
It's my understanding that you're fine with all of those conditions. Okay. In my listening to the testimony, there may be a few other conditions that are going to come along from me that are different than theirs.
Okay.
But they have to do with making sure things that you said actually are going to happen. And those are issues related to noise. You talked about 45 decibels inside.
Mhm.
I think I may have a condition, something like that at the property line where the residential properties start. We talked about lighting. I would expect it to be the outdoor lighting code, especially those having to do with light trespass,
Mhm.
and that there is some condition on that. See if there's the SF6 gas. I would probably like to see a condition. I'm going to come up with a condition on that to make sure that there's some kind of reporting from TEP to the planning department, that safety protocols are being handled correctly, and that there's some transparency that we're watching that too, even though it appears it has a very safe kind of system, but to give some transparency to that. I had a question. You're going to get access from Vine Avenue. Was there any reason why you didn't make it access to Ring Road? I realize Ring Road is a private road.
So typically it's defined by how access is provided within the substation layout, within the walls of the substation.
Okay, and I wouldn't expect that you should be deprived of access from a public road. So, okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
And Mr. Mizako, if I may, so I think I might have stated this previously, but our substations are unmanned. They require very little vehicular traffic. Only in the instances of maintenances or emergency will the substation need to be accessed. So traffic is minimal.
When I was going through the materials, I looked at what the design review board did, and I think they were bringing it in the wall, which is a pretty substantial wall, 13.5 feet, at 0 lot line on 3 sides. And the things that they're doing, making it similar to the materials being used by the university, doing the step-ins to break up the massing a little bit, having a landscape buffer yard in that area. But the one thing I didn't notice, and those do a lot of things for neighborhood sensitivity, but there was this thing about historic resources. And usually when that comes up, we're talking about a building, and the building, we ask it to use some of the architectural features that are nearby, just to kind of tip their hat at that historic area. In this case, I'm considering a condition where TEP would put some type of public art that has a historic connection to this historic neighborhood. And I haven't come up with it completely yet, but expect that may be coming at you at some point. With that, Mr. Eddy, unless you have some comment on any of that, I have this feeling on this case that whether it goes this way or that way, it's going to be appealed. So for the record, I would just like to read into the record the appeal process for a zoning examiner special exception. And this is from section 3.4.3I, capital I. The zoning examiner's decision may be appealed to the mayor and council by any party of record. So a party of record refers to anybody who's received notification, anybody who has provided written materials, the applicant, and anybody who has spoken and given their address. So that's a party of record. So there's a lot of people who are party of records here tonight. So any party of record in accordance with, there's a section 3.92 of the code, by submitting a notice of intent to appeal to the city clerk within 14 days from the effective date of the decision, with a copy delivered to Planning and Development Services. The complete appeal materials must be filed with the city clerk within 30 days of the effective date of the decision. So for the record, to both sides of this, that is the appeal process, which I assume no matter what I say on this, somebody's going to appeal it. With that, I think everybody has spoken. I've listened to you. I've read all the materials that I've been provided with. I've considered both sides as seriously as I can. And I think I don't need any further continuances, that there will be a decision next week that both sides can look at and decide if they want to appeal it. Do you have anything else to say?
No, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mazzocco. Thank
Okay.
you.
Did you want to say something, Mr. Dempsey? You're kind of propped up in your chair there. I'll give you a chance. I let him speak. If you'd like to say a last word, I'm okay. Okay.
I'll be
Sure.
I'll be fast. So I think Mr. Eddy, Mr. Eddy mentioned reliability, and there is nothing more reliable than underground transmission lines, underground infrastructure. The city of Mesa has 3 times better reliability than TEP, and that's because they have underground lines. So the idea that somehow we're gonna have less reliability if we follow the city code or follow the plans and ordinances is false. Thanks.
Mr. Schwartz?
Thank you very much, and thank you for all you've done. I just wanted to remind you that this isn't the first zoning examiner decision on this. There was another zoning examiner decision, I think 4 to 5 years ago. And I just remind you of the last paragraph in that, that concluded that the route going to and from the Vine substation was a critical enough matter that the zoning examiner couldn't make a decision until he had knowledge or she had knowledge of the route. And so it wasn't just the Vine substation that was the zoning examiner felt was relevant. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, with that, it is 6:43 p.m. This public hearing is closed. I will have a decision next week. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for all of your comments.